The Simcoe Little Theatre has been around since the 1940s, providing live entertainment to generations of theatergoers. But no play has been more historic than Quilting Pieces, a production set both in the past and the present, written by local playwright Barbara Robertson along with her sister and current director Elizabeth Corwin. The script is nearly a decade old, with the sisters using their family history for inspiration.
Yes, my mother quilted, my aunts all quilted, my grandma. And I think all the stories, lots of the stories are from my family. We're Ontario for generations, and I realize there are a lot of different stories. There are Ukrainian quilts, and every country has some kind of a quilting tradition, but the stories in this show are Ontario.
Nice. This family-made performance takes place in the present day, where we meet some of our main characters, including Hudson Melcott, the shift worker and decoy maker, and his wife, Carrie, the avid quilter.
Then there's a guild this afternoon. Well, which one?
The one at the church.
Carrie, along with her daughter, are both part of a quilt guild, which is a group of ladies devoted to creating and preserving quilts within their community. Then, without warning, the play sends the audience back in time to the 1890s, a simpler time with even more quilts. We meet the folks of old Norfolk County and get a look into their lives back in the day. As the director puts it, the stories in her productions don't come from the characters, they come from the quilts.
The thing about quilts is it's art that wears out. You can either make a quilt, put it away in a box, and nobody ever sees it, or you can use the quilt and then it's going to wear out and it will be gone. So the only thing that's left is the story about the quilt. Oh yes, I made this quilt because my granddaughter was getting married and she wanted to have a quilt, and so, whatever the story is. And so there's the quilts that are historically important, but also the quilts that are really important to the family. Here's my dad's tie, and there's my piece of my wedding dress, and just things like that.
Nice.
And so the stories that go with them are important too, because the quilts eventually wear out.
The staging of the play at the Simcoe Little Theatre, while the most recent, has not been the only incarnation of the production. Like most of the play, the two-act show started in the past, 8 years ago, at the Old Town Hall in Waterford. Afterwards, the two-act show made its way as far north as Ottawa, with the director's permission, of course. The play always brought in huge crowds, selling out numerous shows with its family-friendly historical plot and its toe-tapping musical accompaniments, inspired by the music of the olden days, although the play was actually created by accident.
It was just an accident, really. I was asked to direct a show. A local museum was having a quilt show, and they thought a show about quilts would be great to go with it. So they asked me to read a script, which turned out to be American, and I didn't really care for the story. It was a bit odd, I thought. And it's not our country. So I called my sister and asked her if she'd like to write a play with me, and she said she would, and so that's how it started. We did most of it on by computer and telephone calls, and we actually got together a couple of times.
And so, with the play being dusted off for yet another historic performance, one question remained for the director. What should people take away from Quilting Pieces, besides the fact that there are a lot of quilts?
Well, the play itself is kind of interesting because none of the women who are in this version of the play or the version I directed 8 years ago were quilters. And so we had to take away all the needles and the threads because they didn't know what to do with them. So they're just pretending. So I'm hoping that they have more of an interest in quilting. And the same with the people who are here. You understand the heartbreak that goes with the quilts, or the good news, and just the family warmth is represented by a quilt.